In this edition of Fifth Gear, the truth about Lamborghini's new Gallardo. A look back at the Sinclair C5. Plus,
tonight on Fifth Gear,
we're looking at the accident that is 10
times more likely to injure you than any other.
The accident that cost the insurance companies billions
of pounds worth of insurance claims
and injures up to 200,000 every year.
The accident that could be just around the corner.
On Fifth Gear tonight, we're looking at
rear end shunts.
Getting smacked up the...
But why are we so interested in rear end impacts?
Well, we all know about the tests that ensure our cars behave themselves when they get hit at the front. But we were staggered to discover that apart from some stuff about fuel tank leakage and a token test for seatbacks, there's no law governing how well we're protected when we get hit from the rear.
No legislation, no rules, no regs, no statutes, not even a guideline. Nothing.
So we've done some digging and found out how well modern cars do protect you when you get shunted from behind. We'll reveal the best and we'll reveal the worst. I guarantee you'll be shocked by the result.
Then we'll raise the stakes as we see the return of red aerials and remote-controlled cars to Fifth Gear when we assemble a team of experts to stage the most frightening rear-ender of all, a motorway pile-up.
But first, here's what I did this summer.
This is the brand new baby Lamborghini, the Gallardo, and I've just spent a day with it.
Well, what a whirlwind 24 hours that was. And it all started like this.
First, there was Lamborghini's own in-flight movie on the way over to Italy, a tantalising promo film shot in New York. And then a specification that was all about big numbers. A 5-litre V10, 500 horsepower, 4-wheel drive, and a price tag of £115,000.
I'm rather excited. An all-new Lamborghini. Mind you, I can't help thinking they're asking you for trouble because they're pitching it head-to-head with two of the most successful cars ever. Porsche 911 Turbo and the Ferrari 360. And that Ferrari is the best-selling Ferrari ever. But Lamborghini want a slice of that action, so it better be good.
But before they'd show me the keys, me and the other journalists had a few of the usual lectures to endure. Chief stylist Luke Donkerwalk told us how the Lamborghini old guard think he's nothing more than the designer of the engine cover, and how inspiration for the Gallardo's lines came from a razor-sharp tailored suit and a jet fighter. I bunked off the other lectures for a snoop around on my own and discovered the gearbox was behind the engine for better weight distribution and that it had an Audi-influenced aluminium space frame. Time to bag a car of my own.
Right, this is panic time. The journalists are all rushing for their cars, trying to get the colour they want, the specification they want. Hopefully we've got a man on the inside that's promised us an orange one with a manual gear shift.
The fight for the cars was pandemonium, but me and the crew kicked back and watched the melee unfold, trusting our man to come up with the goods. Which colour would you have scrapped for?
Plan work then.
So then, orange Lambo, Italian hills. What is it they say about days like these? Of course, it's always spoilt by something. For me, the interior just isn't special enough. And as this is intended to be a practical sports car, it would be nice to have some more luggage space. The design details, though, are fantastic.
Once you're on the move, it seems like forever before you need another gear. I'm still in first, and I'm still in first, and I'm doing 110 kilometres an hour, which is about 70 miles an hour in first gear, which doesn't bode well for performance driving around tight corners.
Indeed, keeping it in the power band on a twisty road is hard work. You need to punch down to first, squirt out of the corner, then a quick blast in second, first, second, first, second. It's exhausting.
The Gallardo corner is very flat and controlled. The damping's apparently working all the time to help you. Because of that, maybe, you don't get an instant feel through your bum for what the car is actually doing. A 360 and a 911 seem much more instantly alive. You feel much more a part of the driving involvement. So far, what looked fantastic on paper is turning out to be a slight disappointment.
Wisely, Lamborghini had given the first drive to the local chief of police. And, surprise, surprise, there were absolutely no complaints at all as various Gallardos flew around the countryside being, tested. I headed back to the skid pan to try a different car with the paddle shift gearbox, a £5,500 extra.
I'm getting used to the paddles, it blips up. In fact, it's one of the best paddle changes I've ever driven, so it is impressive. I'd still stick to the manual, but as paddles go, it's very good. Power sliding, it's not easy. You get the back out. It's quite a lot of turns from lock to lock. You catch the slide, and as you try to hold a power slide, I think the viscous diff makes the front wheels grip more, and it almost takes the power slide away from you. So I'm still learning how to get the most out of it.
Exercise 2 demonstrated the ABS with an instructor who found great beauty in the art of braking. I felt this was all rather beneath me, but whoops, clipped a cone.
Even though I obviously like to think I know what I'm doing in these things, it's always good to these sort of tests to remind you how ABS works, how you have to brake very hard, how you have to stay on the brake pedal and steer just neatly through the obstacles. So it's very good to keep on going back to basics, reminding yourself how to avoid accidents.
My notes so far read, great looks, very safe, but slightly dull. The Gallardo had one last chance to impress. With a top speed of 192 miles an hour, it was time to let the power do the talking and give my orange manual some stick round the track.
A bit of a curve. The higher the speed, the car really works much better. It's only really in the very tight first gear hairpins and second gear hairpins that the front wants to wash wide. But then with 500 horsepower on tap, this is the safest way to go for most average drivers. It's got none of the friskiness that perhaps a Ferrari 360 does have. Except when you let the understeer wind off, then kick. Whoa. Kick to the back in first gear. The braking is very, very good. It's got virtual competition brakes. And with all the high-tech Audi technology, the electronic brake distribution really does work here because the nose dives under braking, and yet you don't get the rear wheels suddenly wanting to lock up. Time to give me and the car a bit of time to cool off. The main thing is it's incredibly safe, very sure-footed. It's got all the technology, even with the ESP switched off, the electronic brake distribution is working with you. But for me, it's all about feel. I want to be a bit more in control of the car than I am with this Lamborghini. I can't set it into a corner and adjust its attitude as much as I would want to. Well, if you've been saving hard for your first £100,000 car, it would be very easy to get tempted by the sure-footedness of this 500 horsepower Lamborghini. But I'm afraid it's not quite exceptional enough to make you cancel your order for a Ferrari 360.
Now, wasn't this where we came in? What a difference a day makes.
Tonight we're looking at rear-end collisions. Most happen at only 10 or 20 miles an hour. They might not damage your car, but they can give you a serious neck injury. Miss Whiplash is a cruel mistress, dishing out misery to 200,000 people a year. This real-life German volunteer demonstrates how horrific even a 10-mile-an-hour crash can be. For a split second, forces on the neck reach 10 G.
What happens during a whiplash-type crash is your body goes forward during the crash, but your head, due to inertia, lags behind. This creates damage, in mild cases, to the tendons and muscles of the neck, but in serious cases can involve damage to nerve endings of the spinal cord.
Still not graphic enough for you? Well, just imagine that the forces involved in that 10-mile-an-hour tap are equivalent to being smashed in the face by Mike Tyson. In the absence of regulations to protect us, it's the insurance companies who are scratching their heads to save our necks, hoping to reduce the rising claims for whiplash injuries, which currently stand at £1.7 billion a year. At their research centre in Thatcham, they've built a sophisticated rig to replicate real-life crashes and a special dummy to sit on it. They use BioRid, who is worth £80,000 and has his own version of one of the most elegant yet delicate constructions in the world, the human spinal column.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
BioRid has helped show the importance of seat design in the fight against whiplash. After over 300 tests, big differences are emerging between good seats and bad ones. Surprisingly, and you're not going to believe this, one of the worst performers is the Mark IV Golf. The problems with the Golf start with the fact that it hasn't got a lockable head restraint. So even if you are one of the few people who adjust them correctly, it's too easily pushed back in again. And then it's a long way too far behind your head and too far below your head. So in that rear impact, your skull just twists back over the top of it. Most Volkswagen Group cars like Audis and Skodas share a similar seat design and are relatively poor whiplash performers. But the company is aware of the problem, and the next generation of cars like this Touran are better. If you thought a Land Rover Freelander would be good, you'd be wrong. While Citroën have improved the design of their C3 seats after they've been through the Thatcham tests, and they now score well. A good news story is the Vauxhall Vectra. Not only does it have a lockable head restraint, it's also got an active head restraint. So when you're hit from behind, the weight of your body coming backwards bends levers, which pushes the top of the seat both forwards and upwards. The result is that body and head move forward together in the crash. The best seats of all, though, come from Sweden. Volvo seats have an energy absorber so that the body doesn't jerk forwards, leaving the head behind. It works so well that it's halved injury claims. But top of the league is the Saab 9-3. Not only does it have the same active head restraint as the Vectra, but it's got a slightly higher seat back, which moves the head restraint nearer your head, meaning that in the accident, the dummy, and therefore you, hardly move at all. Just what the doctor ordered. Thatcham's latest league table of seats, based on static measurements alone, will be on their website next week, while they'll be publishing the results of their moving sled tests early next year. But if you've been shocked by what happens in a low-speed shunt, join us in a moment when we put our foot down and stage a 70-mile-an-hour pile-up.
On the night of January the 10th, 1985, an advert was broadcast to a nation waiting wide-eyed in anticipation. This is what we heard.
Imagine a vehicle that you can drive for 5 miles for a penny. A vehicle that needs no petrol, just a battery, and that takes the press of a button to start, the squeeze of a lever to stop. That needs no license, no road tax, and you can drive it whether you're 14 or 40. A vehicle that costs just £399. The Sinclair C5 is a new power in personal transport. Well, it obviously wasn't a new power in personal transport. Sales struggled, and despite slashing the price massively to £140, Sir Clive Sinclair's C5 remained an embarrassing joke. But you know what? He got a really raw deal.
The media hated the C5. Poorly researched reviews said that it used the motor out of a vacuum cleaner. Rosper turned round and said, "We are satisfied it's not inherently unsafe." and the papers seized on such faint praise, and safety concerns escalated. Sir Clive and the C5 were high profile and ripe for a kicking. Entrepreneur-inventor Clive Sinclair had already cracked the pocket TV and the pocket calculator. You'd think a man with that track record would deserve a little respect, even with those trousers. But it's never been cool to like C5s, so people haven't heard about all the good things. Like the fact that it was developed by Lotus. It also pioneered a simple yet elegant manufacturing process. Basically, the plastic body came in two parts that were joined by thermoplastic tape. And that fused the two together when you applied an electric current. It's tough as old boots. You can drive it into brick walls at full pelt and just bounce off. Even the seat, which is based on a Capri, is cleverly designed so that one size fits all. And once you're in, it's completely intuitive to use. The advanced thinking continued with a front brake that was designed not to lock, so you could always steer in an emergency. Even expensive motors didn't boast ABS back then. And you didn't buy C5s from hard sell salesmen at expensive dealerships, but by mail order or from high street shops. You feel no more vulnerable in traffic than if you're on a bicycle or a moped, but it could do with a heater. Weather protection was non-existent, and launching the C5 in bleak midwinter meant that everyone who tested one got cold and wet and chilblains. Even the optional fashion design cagoule for £35 was no comfort. Sinclair likened it to designer clothing. No, Sir Clive, no. The biggest problem, though, was the claimed 20-mile battery range. The AA said it was more like 10. But it still shouldn't have put anyone off. The average bicycle journey is only 6 miles long, and this is much more fun. If the C5 had been sold as a recreational toy rather than an urban commuter, it could have been a very different story. Compare it to this year's fad, the Segway. Obviously not idiot-proof, as President Bush couldn't work it out. And when the battery went flat on some of them, they fell over. When the battery fails in a C5, you just pedal home. The Sinclair C5 was way ahead of its time. And you know what? We've only just realised it.
We're looking at rear-end impacts. We've seen how minor shunts like these cause the kind of neck-snapping action like this. But now it's time to investigate crashes at higher speeds. And the worst-case scenario, the one every driver must fear, is the motorway pile-up. But why do they happen in the first place? There are 3 reasons.
Small nose-to-tail bumps are caused by dopey driving.
Things go wrong when a dopey driver brakes too late. The result is a concertina crash, an everyday occurrence on our roads.
Pile-ups are also caused by people travelling too close to big vehicles, get stuck behind a van or a 4x4, and your ability to see into the future is restricted.
If you stay this close, you're likely to end up with a spas all over your face.
Take the rain scenario.
It happened earlier this year on the M6. A sudden hailstorm resulted in 2 pile-ups and 60 smashed cars.
But the real headline grabbers are the pile-ups that happen not in rain, but in fog.
As the dawn fog began to lift this morning, it revealed a...
The most horrific example of recent years was this one on the M42 on March the 10th, 1997. 160 smashed vehicles, 20 serious injuries and 3 deaths. Eyewitnesses likened the scene to a battle zone.
The fog that caused it was the worst sort. Radiation fog. It forms during the night, and the dangerous thing about it is that it builds up in banks and patches, so that one minute you've got 400 metres visibility, and the next, just 10.
The M42 pile-up started with a single minor bump. Traffic started to stack up, and eventually the back of the queue reached a patch of dense fog where visibility was down to just 10 metres. The speed restriction signs were flashing, but many drivers chose to ignore them.
Some wisely slowed down, but others didn't, and those following just the taillights of the car in front of them reacted too late.
The result, 90 crashed cars in one carriageway.
It didn't stop there. A mixture of smoke aggravated the fog and rubbernecking caused another 70 to crash on the other carriageway, and fires were so fierce that the road melted.
Shocking stuff, yet experts say some of us treat driving in fog like a computer game, a macabre test of skill.
I was driving at a reasonable speed with all my blue lights and hazard warnings showing. I was pretty horrified to find that even in those conditions there were vehicles overtaking me at speeds of up to 70 miles an hour.
The outcome, 20 serious injuries and 3 deaths. And the court of law didn't just blame it on the weatherman. 28 drivers were prosecuted for careless driving. 1 went to prison.
The aftermath of a pile-up is truly shocking, but the bit we don't normally witness, the actual process of how a routine 70-mile-an-hour drive can turn into carnage, is even more sobering, which is why we've decided to recreate exactly what happens.
We've got 18 stationary cars parked as if they'd come to a halt on the motorway. Hidden in a bank of fog, if you arrived at the scene still doing 70 miles an hour, you wouldn't even have time to brake before you hit them.
We'll be using this Metro to drive into the cars at 70. It's been converted to run remotely by James Brighton and his team. They control the steering, the throttle and the brakes. Capturing the destruction will be an array of high-speed cameras. With final preparations made, we waited for the impact.
After just one high-speed impact, there's undoubtedly already loss of life. And it wouldn't end there. Along would come another driver doing 70, about to enter that wall of fog with just 10 metres visibility and no time to brake. This is the result of just 2 people driving too quickly for the conditions, ignoring the warning signs. On a busy motorway, their cars would likely be followed by another and another and another.
The first lunatic in this Metro sort of hit that Fiat Uno only on the one side, which spun him round to the side of the door, went into this Cavalier. Amazing the footwell hasn't caved in on them, but obviously this door impact, the twisting at 70 miles an hour would probably have killed the driver, if not a passenger as well. But it's the Fiat Uno that just makes your heart go queasy, because hit first by that Metro, which stoved in the rear end, the Mercedes then came ploughing into the same accident. And this, believe it or not, is the rear wheel and the front wheel of that Fiat. As a family man, the damage to this family car is truly sickening. Again, the story you always hear, the guy in the big car gets away with it, and the fact this big Mercedes hit the rear quarter of the Escort over that launched up in the air, that took some of the energy out of the impact, and incredibly inside, there's virtually no deformation at all. You can believe, with modern airbags, seatbelts, that all the occupants in that Mercedes could have survived. But again, you look at the smaller car that it hit, the Escort. One impact has just cleaned the right-hand side of the car away, snapped the wheels off. Surprisingly, the impact didn't go that far through the pack, and it really is that first row that gets squashed. It's just luck of the draw, I guess. If you're on the back of the pack, you're the one that gets hit.
A 30-mile-an-hour warning sign doesn't mean knock your speed down to 70 and stop texting your mate. No matter how unrealistically slow it may seem, when there's fog about, slashing your speed is the only way to avoid these frightening sculptures. So next time you see a warning, remember this.